Welcome to the Doom Scroll News Report here on Radio Taiwan International, where I, Amanda Stevens, and my co-host,
Anna Belinsky,
two writers, political by necessity, cover some of the biggest international news stories dominating our feeds from the last week. I'm Amanda Stevens, and this week we're tackling a different kind of AI lawsuit than normal. I swear. It's totally different from what we would usually cover. And the movie studio merger, which may swing your news a little more right wing. And we're going to start off for our icebreaker with an article we won't have time to get to. But it's about this new viral movement of CEOs trying their own product. The McDonald's CEO trying his own burger, but not really trying it. So, Hannah, my opening question to you is, if you could choose one single big boss or CEO and the exact product of theirs that they'd have to try, what would it be?
Oh, what a great question.
Yeah.
So I would make the Starbucks CEO, that's Brian Nichols right now, although who it is doesn't really matter. I would make the Starbucks CEO drink that swill they call coffee black. No cream.
Yeah.
No sugar, none of the syrups, none of that other crap they use to disguise the simple fact that their coffee, you know, the basic element of most of their drinks, tastes like burnt, bitter trash.
I agree. I think you're right on the money. I would like for the people who run Ticketmaster to have to go through their own system for everything they ever want to attend.
Yes.
That's for Live Nation and Ticketmaster. I want them to have to buy tickets to everything they would ever want to attend on their own system.
Including going to the bathroom.
For the rest of their lives. But I'm going to get back to, I know you guys expected this of me. You were right. AI.
Woo! Really?
Can you believe it? I mean, I was following an AI story again. Okay, but this time I find this one very interesting because I feel like it's not the kind of story that I would normally cover, but I'm also kind of covering it in terms of like our Iran war coverage.
Yeah.
Because I think they're deeply connected.
Because it's like the girls are fighting. You know, it's not
right.
It's not just AI person does something highly unethical. There's more to it.
Yeah. So now we actually did lay the groundwork for this story. I think it was last summer when we talked about how the Pentagon had just cut deals with AI companies to integrate them into the Pentagon's operations. And we mostly focused on Grok still being offered a contract despite having earlier that month, I believe, called itself a mecha Hitler.
It's beyond
everybody knows
parody.
how I feel about Grok. We're moving on because it's not about them today because regardless of my feelings, the deal still happened. And the AI that kind of benefiting the most on the outside was Anthropic. Maybe because out of all the other AI companies, they were one of the smaller pool which is allowed to work with classified information. And they already have experience working with Palantir, which is another like military, paramilitary group.
Yep.
This was probably the best that could have shaken out. Because compared to many of these other startups, Anthropic likes to think of itself, and they do strive to be the safe AI, whatever you might believe that means.
The or at good least, guy AI.
Right.
Yeah.
At least the one who is perhaps the most concerned with equally considering the risks and trying to mitigate the negative consequences of AI. The company actually, in researching this story, I learned is made up of a lot of people that left ChatGPT and Sam Altman over ethical concerns. And internally, a lot of people at Anthropic are very conflicted about working with the Pentagon. But it happened anyway. This resulted in them drawing two whole boundaries with the Pentagon over how their AI technology could be used. Hannah, do you want to guess what those boundaries were, or do you already know? I did black them out of the script because I wasn't sure if you knew.
I already knew.
That's okay.
I know that they drew the line at mass surveillance and at the use of AI-powered weapons, which are two very reasonable boundaries.
Well, and let's zero in on mass surveillance for a second, because it's not actual mass surveillance. They drew the line at mass domestic surveillance.
Yes, surveilling the people at home.
So they were apparently okay with surveilling people overseas. Although I feel like if you're going to cut a deal with the Pentagon, you already know that they're going to want to use information and organizing what is useful information versus not useful information.
And you know what? I had just read that AI has proven itself to be able to figure out who someone is posting anonymously on the internet just based on like an aggregated profile
Like a
of all their
profile.
posts.
Right.
Yeah, they can suss that out now. So,
Right.
I mean, you're pretty much already not anonymous. Keep it in mind.
Yeah. So anyway, these were their two boundaries. Don't use our AI for fully autonomous weapons, and do not use AI for mass domestic surveillance. Sorry, we'll make that very clear. What are your thoughts on those two exceptions, Hannah?
So I believe it was IBM who first said, way back when computers were first becoming a thing at all, that a computer can never be held accountable. Therefore, a computer must never make a management decision.
Which is also why legally, when it comes to like a computer and a computer system, cannot be held accountable in a court of law.
Exactly. And I think that slots in perfectly with the issue at hand. I don't think a computer should ever decide something that might impact whether someone lives or dies.
Right.
It seems like such a no-brainer. Like, of course, we shouldn't allow that. That's a major ethics violation.
Right.
And yet, for some reason, people are willing to offload everything, even the business of killing, to a computer. I think there's some things where we should never, ever be without human oversight.
Yeah.
And no matter how advanced artificial intelligence becomes, it's just, we got to draw this line.
Well, and to your point, like Anthropic actually agrees with you.
Yeah.
And that's great. We love that. That's the bare minimum.
Bare minimum.
But they are holding that bare minimum line. Yeah. And that was their line. That's also what got them into trouble because, as many of you know, this is where things go south. Because my second least favorite person in the White House got involved.
Least favorites.
And ruined everything. So on January 9th, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth published a memo saying that basically things are going to change. AI is war. AI is life. AI is the future. Let's do autonomous weapons like drones and fighter jets without pilots. So all of the involved AI companies, including those that were not Anthropic, did not like this idea. But they kept it quiet. They were reviewing their contracts with the Pentagon quietly in the background, not making a big deal out of it. Until the Maduro strike, where Anthropic became aware after the fact that their products were used in the Maduro hit without their information. And this is crazy because it's like the Pentagon didn't tell them, and they literally had to ask. Their employees were asking third-party employees for information.
Did you guys do this thing?
It was literally
stuff?
Not even that. They were like, did you hear if the Pentagon used our thing for the stuff? Because there was no communication.
God.
Which is crazy to me. Things rapidly escalated from there, but it could be boiled down to Anthropic after that wanting their two red lines that we just mentioned codified in a contract in writing versus Hegseth, who was basically like, we'll use it however we want and you'll fall in line and actually even stop asking us questions at all. And if you don't like this, we're going to punish you severely. That's not an exaggeration.
He's such a primitive man. Anyway.
So Anthropic didn't back down, which is good. But then early last week, the government, via Hegseth, announced that they were going to designate Anthropic as a supply chain risk to national security, which means that any contractor that does business with the U.S. military will not be allowed to conduct commercial activity with Anthropic. And worse than that, OpenAI, Sam Altman's OpenAI, ChatGPT, which had publicly said that they supported Anthropic's red lines, like they were out there like, yes, girly, hold that line. They had already basically swooped Anthropic's Pentagon contract.
Yep.
So in the same breath that they were like, actually, you guys are a threat to national security. We hate you. We're now best friends with ChatGPT.
Yikes.
That's another story. I can't even get into that right now because there's drama all around. But our story is actually that last Monday, March 9th, Anthropic sued the U.S. government, arguing that their actions to punish the company were illegal, saying, quote, the Constitution does not allow the government to wield its enormous power to punish a company for its protected speech, end quote, as per Callie Hayes at the BBC. So I'm not going to ask too much into like where this is going because we don't know yet, but do you think that they have a case here, Hannah? And who, if anyone, are you rooting for in this kind of high-level standoff?
Man, it's complicated because in the end, when you read their statement, it's clear Anthropic is kind of trying to backpedal a little bit and to protect their bottom line. So I don't necessarily root for them per se. And I do think they have a case, but in the age of zero accountability governance, which apparently we're living in, justice will probably be very, very, very slow. I think, if anything, it's about who I'm rooting against, and that's OpenAI Sam Altman, opportunistic freak that he is.
Well, so, and I'll get into it just a little bit. I think that Anthropic is the best company for this job because I think they're going to be working with AI regardless.
It's truly
so
like
I'm
the
glad,
lesser of all of the evils.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm glad that at least the company that was working with them was like, hey, we really think you shouldn't have a machine making decisions on autonomous weapons.
That kills people
That's
automatically.
at least a line I think we should have. The reason why they wanted it in writing is because that's something that has to be like taken to court.
Yeah.
ChatGPT decided to go ahead and sign the contract anyway. Their quote-unquote solution was to have it written into the code. And the reason why that wasn't good enough for Anthropic is because their argument is if it can be written into the code, it can be written out of the code.
Yeah.
And if you are at the beck and call of the Pentagon without a written agreement that you could take them to court or break your cooperation over, then they could just demand, and they would likely
because they
demand.
have. They've
already done it, right?
They've already done it.
So why wouldn't they tell you to just take that out?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, all of these guys are sus. I just want Sam Altman to lose the most because I think he is the most evil. And actually, he did lose a few employees who moved over to Anthropic as a result of this.
Ironically,
so I guess that's good.
Yeah, there is sort of like in the court of public opinion, at least, Anthropic has come out as a huge winner.
Definitely.
So we'll just have to kind of see where this plays out. But do bear this in mind as you watch the coverage of Iran, because the United States is now probably culpable for hitting that girls' school. And so think about who,
even per our own investigations,
through internal American investigations, not internal Pentagon, but internal American investigations, have found that out. So think about who was the one who pulled the trigger. And do you believe that it was a person or was it a machine? So another thing that we've talked about in private, but not on this show, is that Warner Brothers was set to be bought out by Netflix. This was scary for the movie industry when it happened, because Netflix has said that they don't really see the point of theaters, which is their whole. That's obviously the whole point of their service.
That's like their thing,
right? So it seemed at that time when that merger was likely that it would be a slow fade for one of America's oldest, biggest studios. There would be much more straight to streaming movies, that kind of thing. Then came Paramount. After an aggressive takeover and buyout campaign, Paramount is now the one who was buying Warner Brothers Studios. And Netflix has decided to give up on pursuing this merger, which has the movie people feeling great.
Yeah.
Paramount loves movies, and they actually promised in their bid to produce somewhere like 30 films a year and put them in theaters. This is great news. Hannah, you know I love temperature checks, so let's take one. How long have you been following this story, and what are your immediate concerns with the summary that I may have just given?
So this feels like a battle between two things I care quite a lot about, and that is the survival of movie-going and the film industry as we know it, and the freedom of the press.
Right.
Which I suppose both of these things boil down to freedom of expression, which is a tenet I worship above all. But
and we've talked about multiple times on the show. It'll come up again.
It will continue to come up again. I have kind of loosely followed this. I definitely didn't want Netflix to buy this, buy them out. I mean, I don't hate Netflix. My family has been a user of Netflix since back when they were just renting out DVDs through the mail.
Me too. I was there.
We were there.
That was how I got my old Japanese anime DVDs.
Yeah, and it was a great service, but now, it's a certain brand now, and you don't want to Netflixify movies in general, or I don't want to see that happen. So, but then there's the news.
I mean, yeah. And so when I first heard this story back in, I believe it was like December or early January, it was introduced to me as a lose-lose situation. It was either that if Netflix buys it, it is likely that Netflix will not try to affect the news organizations under the Warner Brothers Studios, which is where our conversation today is going to contend. Warner Brothers is responsible for CNN because Netflix is an independent entity. They're kind of okay with being a little bit more like open, and they are unlikely to want to change that company culture.
Right.
But if Paramount bought it, there would be more support for movies. But the owner of Paramount is not someone who people feel the same way about.
Once again, it's a bit sus.
Right. A lot of the conflict can be boiled down to a complicated web of conflicts of interest, which we haven't seen play out entirely. There's that little caveat, and we won't really be able to see it play out for some time.
It always takes time, doesn't it?
To paint a picture of how much the Ellison family, the owners of Paramount now, own if the merger gets approved, because it hasn't, but it seems like it's likely to.
Yeah.
If it gets approved, it would mean that the Ellisons now own Warner Brothers, Paramount Plus, HBO, CBS News, CNN, TNT, TBS, Food Network, Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, HGTV, among others. There's more that we didn't talk about. So, first of all, massive control over the media sphere. But we're going to zoom in on the possible effects of CNN and CBS News. So a lot of nervousness is centered on CBS News editor-in-chief Barry Weiss and Paramount/Skydance chief executive David Ellison, who have been accused of pulling media under their control further to the right to try to win favor with Trump. Weiss has very little TV experience, but was brought on by Ellison to curry favor with Trump and has the now typical conservative commenter turned big decision maker career path. And she first made headlines by pulling a 60 Minutes segment in December about abuses in the CCOP prison in El Salvador, citing, among other things, a lack of response from the Trump administration as a reason that it couldn't be aired. For his part, Ellison is known as a Trump friend, however you see it. And David Ellison's dad, Larry, is also a Trump ally and a Republican mega donor. David's loyalties seem at best driven by profits over morals. And internally, staff at both CNN and CBS seemed largely upset, with The Guardian's Jeremy Barr recording reactions to the news of this merger, ranging from employees fearing downsizing, calling it the downfall of the media organization CNN, and just running around and cursing. Like this was in the Guardian article that I will link.
I really feel that.
Yeah, relatable. The thing that stuck out to me, though, the most chilling quote, came from Freedom of the Press Foundation advocacy chief Seth Stern, who said, quote, Ellison will readily throw the First Amendment, CNN's reporters, and HBO's filmmakers under the bus if they stand in the way of expanding his corporate empire and fattening his pockets, end quote. So that's a lot of information and a lot of viewpoints to take in. So I, again, want to note that some people were more hopeful about the merger, but most of that hope was kind of centered around the money that the deal generated and stockholder profit, because Warner Brothers Studio is deeply in debt. So they do need money. Hannah, to what extent do you think these fears of the merger leading to heightened media censorship are well-founded versus maybe an overreaction? And do you think there's something that I've missed here?
I think the fears about media censorship and the sort of deliberate politicization of the news, I think these are real. And it's worth paying attention to and to worry about. I think it also just boils down to the last bit you said about shareholder profit. It's really money, you know. We just follow the money. It's America's uber rich, which includes Trump and all his buddies. It
sure does.
Finding ways to get uber richer and using every method they can to insulate themselves from any potential uprising against them, which is something they can use media narratives to do, either by distracting the masses or by making sure all of the media they consume keeps them believing that they are but a temporarily embarrassed millionaire, as some people like to. That's what people say Americans think of themselves as, which I think is pretty true. The thing is, though, everyone who is smart enough to do so is already viewing the media they consume with a critical eye, no matter who owns what. So they're going to keep doing that. And everyone else is going to keep being ignorant. What sucks is this could just make it that much harder to educate those people so that they can stop being ignorant. It's just class war to me, baby. It all comes back to that. Keep the working class stupid and entertained.
To your point, the second part of the Seth Stern quote was that he did mention it's not all hope lost. While he said I believe Ellison would throw everything under the bus, his hope is that obvious censorship is bad for business. Which is true. People hate obvious censorship, so maybe that would cause him to not really want to make changes, because the culture at CNN is very different from other things that he owns, and it's a lot more profitable for him to keep it the same.
It would be very Chinese of us to suddenly censor a bunch of media.
Would it be a very Chinese time in our lives?
A very Chinese time in America's life. We would be China-maxing.
Flash back to 2 episodes ago if that doesn't make sense to you. But let's get back to the movies real quick before we end this, because movie people aren't really getting 100% of a win here either. In absorbing Warner Brothers Studios, Paramount is taking on its massive amounts of debt, which is the biggest reason why Netflix likely walked away from the deal, and why some people are even saying that Netflix may have gotten the better part of the bargain here by not acquiring Warner Brothers, because they have now saddled one of their biggest competitors with this huge debt. Mm-hmm. Some news and culture commenters have pointed out, such as Jonathan Mahler at the New York Times, that this large amount of debt means that this new studio, whatever they will be called, is likely to make much more safe movies for a while, which would include things like nostalgia bait, continuing popular old franchises and superhero movies, things that are guaranteed to make money and get people in theaters. But this also means that we're a lot less likely to get movies like Sinners and One Battle After Another, which are both up for Oscars this year. Hannah, you asked me last week about stories, and so I want to ask you this week about movies, since that's your other show, Retro Reels, and the love for old cinema. What do you think of what seems to me like kind of this devil's bargain? More movies in theaters, but less mold breakers and new ideas.
It's kind of cute. I plugged your show last week, and you're plugging mine this week.
Totally incidental, but yes, it worked out well.
The thing is, I think for the most part, new movies have already been pretty safe. And they have also, by and large, been kind of whatever for so long that this would, to me, just be more of the same. I mean, you don't really want to get me going on this because I don't really watch new movies. I watch a couple.
You watch retro reels.
I watch a couple here and there, but my show is literally about old ones, you know. So
have you seen One Battle After Another or Sinners?
I have not. The most recent movie I saw was The Nickel Boys, based on the novel, which was very sad, and I do recommend watching it, but it was very sad.
But know that it's very sad.
Yes. But I mean, I kind of gave up on the modern film industry long ago. So I think.
So is this sort of in your eyes like a win then? Because it does seem to give hope and like an extended lifeline to the theater industry and the movie industry at large.
To me, it is more of a win than a loss, because as long as the business finds a way to sustain itself until, you know, more people can start making more interesting movies again.
Right.
I don't really care what they do. You know,
what this next period might look like.
They could sometimes
You're okay
crowd
with
pleasers are good even.
Remake 3.
Okay, remakes.
Spider-Man 5.
Remakes. The
Batman,
superhero stuff.
the new thing.
Okay, now you're making me mad. But
just thinking of all these cool restarts that have happened.
The thing is, like, they could also just make like crowd pleasers that are just original ideas, like Spielberg-y stuff, and that is fine. That is fine. Yeah. And I'm just gonna keep watching old ones anyway until they can pique my interest again.
Well, and you know what? I would love to hear that. And also, like, I guess I would chime in to just say, as much as I say this, like, I saw Sinners this last year. It was one of my favorite movies that I saw all of last year.
Oh, great. Maybe I should watch it.
I would really recommend it. I am often somebody who likes to say that just because something is popular doesn't mean that it's bad.
Yeah.
Although I'm
totally
not really sure how I feel about this, though, because I do want them to keep making things that might seem riskier on paper. So who knows?
I mean, there's always going to be prestige cinema, and there's always going to be weird cinema, and there should, I think, always be crowd pleasers, because those are just as fun. And movies as entertainment, that's totally valid. Totally valid.
We got to shut ourselves off, Hannah. We're going to go on this for a long time.
That's right.
This is our thing. So that's all for today's news report. That's all the time we have. Here's a quick reminder that you can find all of our referenced articles in the show notes for today's episode. I'm Amanda Stevens.
I'm Hannah Belinsky.
Thanks for joining us on air today. Tune in tomorrow for more programs by Radio Taiwan International. And in the meantime, remember to stop scrolling and touch grass. We'll see you next week.